Hi, everyone. Thank you for listening. As always, a reminder that this podcast does not constitute real estate advice, legal advice, broker advice, or advice of any other nature. This is an informative podcast. And if you need advice, please reach out to the correct professional who can help you. Thanks for listening.
Welcome to Launch Grow Harvest Podcast, Business Growth Coaching with Connie Boona and Roland Kim.
Hey, everybody. Welcome to the Launch Grow Harvest Podcast. This is Connie Boona.
And Roland Kim. Welcome.
Partner, I'm so excited to be chatting with you. We haven't had the opportunity to connect on the podcast realm in a few weeks. So it feels really nice to be getting back into conversation. What are we talking about today?
Today, I thought we could dig into kind of what has COVID done to the business landscape? What are some of the differences and changes we've noticed now post-COVID, navigating, everything from working with clients to working with partners and peers and maybe a little bit about what has changed, what's better, and perhaps what is more challenging. What have you noticed in post-COVID that is a big difference from pre-COVID?
Yes, absolutely. So a few different things that I've noticed is, for example, in terms of new client meetings or new client interactions, many more people are electing for that first conversation. Pre-COVID, that first conversation might have just been a telephone call. We might have had a 10 or 15-minute phone call to just do a quick high level of like what's going on for you and what are you needing, a bit of a needs analysis. That's definitely shifted now, I find, much more dominantly to like a video call. So you're getting a little bit more of that face-to-face energy while still being able to take the call without having to change locations. So I find that people are maybe a little bit more amenable from a scheduling perspective. And, that's definitely one thing for sure I've noticed. The other thing I've noticed as well is it seems like tolerance or temperament for anything inclement, like a weather event, people have really they will quickly move to like, we're going to go to Zoom or it's closed, we'll skip it. Long gone are the days of like shoveling out your car to drive out to a showing. Like I just find that people are more inclined to reschedule.
Yeah, it is. It is a very interesting change. I find the first point there where you mentioned where, that initial Zoom conversation, so to speak, I feel has really pushed the process forward for a positive that, both of you are still in your comfort zones and you're quickly having, quicker, deeper, more valuable conversation on needs and the core criteria that might have come out previously, on the tour, the first tour versus the first meeting.
Mm-hmm.
And so I find that we're able to get a lot more transparency and clarity on what a client is looking for now than we were pre-COVID. It was almost like we were friendlier perhaps pre-COVID by being face-to-face, but it would take maybe more meetings to actually really understand what's the motivating, principle and features of why we're trying to help this person, why they're looking for us.
Yes.
So that is a real change. I'm also very interested in how significantly people's work cycle has changed. Like so many people now appear to have a pretty solid working from home part of their job. And even many jobs where previously I didn't think that was, a possibility. And so it's interesting watching how that's been continuing and a big change.
Well, the other thing is on that point, actually, I was connecting with some friends who both of them work in New York City, in Manhattan. And my one friend was saying she works for a very large international company in, sort of a bookkeeping, accounting, that sort of like very computer-based work. And of course, COVID was amazing. Like they live in Manhattan and her previous commute was, there's a home base in Manhattan and then there was one like quite a far ways out. and they have mandated people to be going back to work. So her commute again has gone back to like an hour plus commute to the office every day. When she gets into the office, she's literally sitting at her computer all day.
Mm.
And one of the interesting things that came out from that conversation was just like, the real sincere, like she was really challenged because she actually really likes her job. She enjoys the people that she works with. She doesn't want to leave her job necessarily, but this mandated requirement that just became a sort of corporate policy that was pushed down on everyone it might become something that ends up pushing her to another opportunity, despite the fact that there are a lot of other reasons why she enjoys the role. And it made me think, just as an employer, about the balance between having people in the office, which I know historically you and I both have really enjoyed, and the other side of that coin, which is people totally remote. So for folks listening, Roland and I run a number of different businesses. Two of our primary businesses that we run together are a brokerage, where we have about 150 realtors that are working under our umbrella. And we also run a real estate team. We have 10 agents on our team. We have 3 admin. We're in the top 1% of realtors in Greater Vancouver. And previous to the current structure of our org chart within the real estate team, our admins had always been operating from our office. And over the last few years, we've had incredible success. Our primary operations director, our literal right hand, had previously been working out of Saskatchewan, now moved to Calgary, but is 100% remote. And then her second in command is also remote, based in Mexico City. And we have had no negative impact to our business as a result of those folks being fully remote. And I wonder, and I ask you the question, partner, if you think that part of our ability to adopt this structure, has COVID played a part in that?
Most definitely. I mean, if pre-COVID, if our manager brought up that she wanted to hire a second person and it wasn't in her office, it would have been very alarming to have, another virtual person, let alone this amazing team member, Sam, move from Alberta to Mexico, and that would have been a limiting belief that that's going to work out.
Mm-hmm.
And so definitely in our operation for the team environment, those 2 leaders are amazing in getting so much more done and being on point. Even so much, like both of you and I both remember a few weeks ago at Christmas, Tamara came over for the party, and self-evident was saying, "Hey, I'm so much less effective when I'm here in person. It's a lot more fun, but I can't get my stuff done, right? Because she's not around in her office." But it has also brought up this idea where there's definitely people who are better in person and better away. And so I think it's almost like, in order to make this blended environment really work, it requires a lot on the employee or the team member to be really honest with themselves.
Mm-hmm.
Because we're definitely noticing people in our world that they want to work part-time from home, partially from a convenience perspective or an enjoyment. But I would say that that personality perhaps is struggling to be as effective and on point and clear on their tasks when they're working from home. And so it's almost like with more opportunity comes more responsibility. And a lot of that responsibility is now put back on the team member or the employee to be self-regulating and self-aware that, like, oh my gosh, I actually need the office because I do better there.
Yeah.
Or it shows itself that not as much is getting done.
Yeah. I know that I could think that really comes down to personality types, right? Like, I know that, for example, Tamara, our right-hand operations director for our business, is somebody that just does better in a solitary environment. She likes it. It actually allows her to focus and concentrate. Whereas for myself, I find I love coming into the office. I enjoy the interaction. I'm very extroverted. So for me, the social interactions fill my cup. And I also find that working from home can sometimes be a distraction. And especially I have two young children. And when my kids are home, especially, I feel quite guilty to be, locked away. Whereas if I'm at the office, it's like in their minds, I'm away, I'm working. Whereas here, I'm home and ignoring them.
It'll also be really interesting in the future and in perhaps more of the corporate jobs of seeing how people's advancement is influenced and impacted based on, whether they're working in an office and surrounded by leaders that are seeing what they're doing versus someone who might be completely highly successful, but is doing it from afar and getting overlooked on opportunities, right? So we haven't yet seen the leadership change on growth and how it affects people's trajectory in their career on the ones choosing to work from home more than in person.
Well, I think that is something that can't be understated, because the truth of the matter is opportunities often will come to people who are front of mind. And being visibly front of mind is an important consideration when we're thinking about sort of career growth and advancement. Partner, you had some interesting reflections around, sort of your observations on how you believe the optics of leadership has shifted since COVID. Can you share more around that?
Yeah, I feel like there's a real trend in leadership, building up into perhaps the last 5 to 8 years before COVID of service leadership by leaders versus titled leadership. So if you went into an organization and you were a new person there, you would self-designate, or you would recognize the people you thought were leaders based on their actions and how they were earning your trust and interacting. And then when we went into the lockdown with COVID and the reconfiguration of our work environment, I believe since then, just talking to a few of my clients who are pretty established, companies, that titled leadership is becoming again more prevalent, where people are trying to direct others based on the title they have versus the relationship that they've cultivated. So it appears to be a little bit of a step backwards compared to where we were trending. And it's a curious thing, because I find before COVID, people weren't that reliant on my title, right? It was more like, whether I was a title or not, people around me knew that I was a leader because of how I was interacting and the respect that I had earned. But now with a lot of people working, certainly a hybrid, or in some people in an organization that have no boots on the ground, the other team members almost need to lean back into people's titles as clarity on who do I report to, and who do I got to listen to. And so it is curious, because I do think that is an ongoing change as well, where we were kind of more cohesively leading versus now it's I've earned a title, you listen to me again.
So a little bit more of a backstep on being more like my job is director, therefore you listen to me.
Yeah, and so that is a curious change that I'm noticing a little bit in my circles.
Interesting. One of the other things that we've talked about a lot, and maybe other business owners are experiencing, is in this time post-COVID, there was obviously an incredible amount of liquidity flooded into the market in the early stages of the pandemic as relief payments and other injections to keep things afloat. And we're unfortunately now on the other side of that equation in very high inflationary environments. Every single day, I know that folks in our industry are watching inflation numbers and the overall economic indicators that are impacting things like interest rates. not only interest rates, but also, I mean, this does have an impact on cost of living and the basic payments, basic payroll expectations and employment expectations that your average candidate is anticipating and expecting. I know that, for our businesses specifically, we've just established some baselines. Like we simply can't pay anyone in our organization less than, at the bare minimum, $50,000 a year. It's simply because of the cost of living in our region. I'd love to hear your thoughts there, partner, on how you think that's impacting the business environment.
Yeah, I think we're just at the beginning of seeing what the next several years and perhaps a decade looks like with, like a high cost environment, but going sideways. And what's led into that is exactly what you've noted, where when we first fell into, COVID, there was this big idea that liquidity was going to be a problem. And so, the government's doubled the liquidity. Like imagine that. If you can visualize pre-COVID, there's a bale of money that's all the world's money. And then a couple months later, it doubles because they pump that much liquidity into the system. And you would think that would be a positive because, people have more money at that time. And what it's caused the first time in our life that we're experiencing is what we're going through is like inflation, and how just because you have more money, if there's too much of it around, everything starts to go up and no one quite realizes or sees where's the profit margin, like who's making more. And so I'd say a lot of what I'm seeing is folks who are making more in salary, but I question whether they are, left with more money than they were pre-COVID. And so quite quickly in those environments, it's curious to see how you go from high inflation to stagnation. And that's definitely, something that I think post-COVID in a higher salary environment, probably it's going a lot less far. And so people are making more, but they're not saving more and their money isn't stretching as far because somehow, all the tide has lifted all expenses up and it hasn't, it never seems to go back down. And so It's been a real quantum growth in expenses that's been followed with wage growth, but it hasn't followed up with like net accumulation of savings or almost like financial joy, right? Like it seems like everything is harder and costs more to do.
And even for people who, strictly speaking, in not that far a distant past, would be considered to be doing very well. High six-figure income earning people also still struggling and having very stressful conversations about, renewing mortgages, paying for car payments, paying for groceries, basic things, paying for childcare. It's an interesting environment to be in, but we certainly close the conversation with an acknowledgement that we are forever changed based on that experience. Collectively, the collective trauma that the world went through the global pandemic, without a doubt.
Made changes. Thank you, partner.
Awesome. Thank you so much, gang. Please stick around. We've got much more exciting stuff to share with you. Connie Buna and Roland Kim at the Launch, Grow, Harvest podcast.